My name is Robert Yeager. I'm in my 7th year as commander of the Millis American Legion Post 208. By a bit of a background quickly, the Millis American Legion Post 208 was founded in 1920. We're one of the oldest posts in the country, and we're still viable, even though all of those American Legion posts in surrounding towns are not. So we have a fortunate crowd, I guess you could say. The select board and you people are very supportive of the veterans of this town. And that's one of the reasons we're still here. We have only 2 formal ceremonies a year that we do, and this is one of them. The other one is in Veterans Day. And thanks again for coming. Before I start, I want to thank Jim McKay and his Department of Public Works team. In case you haven't noticed, all around town, there are 12 monuments of Millis citizens who died in World War II, and the Millis DPW maintained those monuments with mulch and plants and so forth. They also maintain the square in front of the Millis American Legion that is a tribute to World War I veterans. And of course, here they maintain, especially this area where we as veterans are very proud of. You're going to hear a few words later on the new decorations you may have noticed, the 6 flagpoles on either side that denote the various military groups that defend our country: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. I've been asked to keep my notes brief, so don't let all these papers fool you. And also, the Millis American Legion replaced all the flags at the cemetery, and it sort of explains why we're here and why we even celebrate Memorial Day. And that is, there are over 600 veterans currently lying in rest at the Prospect Hill Cemetery here in Millis. There are currently 352 veterans alive and still living in Millis. So Millis has a strong presence and a strong history in this town. Also, you're probably not aware of it, but Millis, the population of our town is relatively small. However, we have up at Prospect Hill Cemetery 2 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients buried there, and we honor their graves separately. I think this is where I'm supposed to shut up. Turn the platform over to my Vice Commander, Lawrence McCarter.
First, we will open with a prayer. You can remove your hats for the prayer. Dear Lord, continue to look after all of our people who are currently serving in the United States Armed Forces, and look after in the afterlife those veterans who never returned home or were able to rejoin their families. We pray for this. Thank you. Amen. Now, all rise, and if you're a veteran, salute for the playing of the national anthem by the Millis High School Band. for the start of Memorial Day, first from the Grand Army of the Republic, on May 5th, 1868, General Logan's General Order Number 11, an order for Memorial Day, was issued. The 30th day of May, 1868 is designated for the purpose of storing with flowers, otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of the country during the late rebellion, an observance no form of ceremony is prescribed, but post and comrades will in their own way arrange such fitting services and testimonials of respect as circumstances may permit. We are organized comrades, and our regulations tell us for the purpose, among of other things, of preserving and strengthening those kind of fraternal feelings which have bound the soldiers, sailors, and Marines who united to suppress the late rebellion. What can aid more to assure this result to our country and its foes? Their soldiers' lives were the reveille of freedom to a race in chains, and their deaths the tattoo of rebellious tyranny in arms. We should guard their graves with sacred vigilance. All that is concentrated wealth and taste of the nation can add to their adornment and security, and is but a fitting tribute to the memory of her slain defenders. Let no wanton food treat rudely or in such hallowed grounds. Let pleasant paths invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and fond mourners. Let no vandalism of avarice or neglect, no ravage of time testify to the present or the upcoming generations that have forgotten as a people the cost of a free and undivided public. If other eyes grow dull, other hands slack, and other hearts cold in solemn trust, ours shall keep well as long as the night and warmth of light remains within us. Let us then at this time gather around their sacred remains and garland the passionless mounds above with the choicest flowers of springtime. Let us raise above the dear old flag they saved from his honor. Let this solemn presence renew our pledge to assist those when we have left among us a sacred charge upon a nation's gratitude, the soldier and sailor's widow and orphan. It is the purpose of the Commander-in-Chief to inaugurate this observance with the hope that it will be kept from year to year, while the survivor of the war remains to honor the memory of his departed comrades. He easily desires the public press to lend its friendly aid in bringing in the notice of comrades in all parts of the country in time for simultaneous compliance therewith. Department of Commanders will use efforts to make this order effective. By order of John A. Logan, General, Commander-in-Chief, N.P. Chipman, Adjutant General. Official, William T. Collins. I call upon Sean McNiff, a member of American Legion Post 208, for a reading of the proclamation from the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Whereas while the nation was still recovering from the Civil War, people in the cities and towns across the country gathered to honor the soldiers who had given their lives celebrating the first Decoration Day. And whereas after World War I, the nation came together to honor those who had fallen in the service of their country, renamed Memorial Day, the last Monday in May, is when people remember and honor the memory of all men and women who fought and died in American wars and conflicts. And whereas throughout our country's history, thousands of Massachusetts residents have fought in wars and conflicts to defend our safety and way of life, Whereas their legacy of patriotism and dedication to the country is an inspiration to all Americans. Whereas it is appropriate that all Massachusetts residents remember the bravery of those who gave their lives so that their sacrifice to serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. Now therefore, I, Maura T. Healy, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, hereby do proclaim May 27th, 2024 to be Memorial Day, and urge all residents of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Thank you.
For the reading of the Gettysburg Address, I call upon Joseph Hershey, a former captain in the United States Air Force, and also a member of my graduating class of Millis High School, class of '66, and a member of American Legion Post 208, for the reading of the Gettysburg Address.
Edward Everett from Dorchester, a great American orator who served as governor, representative, and senator from Massachusetts, and U.S. Secretary of State, also spoke at Gettysburg, preceding the president. They were there to honor the thousands who had died in the great battlefield a few weeks earlier. He later told Lincoln that I wish I could flatter myself that I had come as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you have done in 2 minutes. That central idea is as relevant today, 160 years later, as it was back then. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they have done here. For it is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they have fought here and have so far thus nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from those honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that that government of the people, for the people, by the people, shall not perish from this earth.
Next thing I have is could all three members of the Board of Selectmen please stand? Our entire Board of Selectmen is present for this, and at this point, I would also like to call upon the reading of a proclamation for the Board of Selectmen, with Selectman Craig Soltz doing that reading.
Whereas Memorial Day, called Decoration Day, is a day of remembrance for those who died in the service of the United States of America. Over 24 cities and towns claim to be the birthplace of Memorial Day. While Waterloo, New York was officially declared the birthplace of Memorial Day by President Lyndon Johnson in May 1966, it's difficult to prove conclusively the origins of the day. Whereas, regardless of the exact date or location of its origins, one thing is clear. Memorial Day was born out of the Civil War and a desire to honor the dead. It was officially proclaimed on May 5th, 1868 by General John Logan, National Commander of the Grand Army of the Republic in his General Order 11. The 30th of May, 1868 is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in the defense of this country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, hamlet, churchyard in the land. He proclaimed the date of Decoration Day, as he called it, because it was not the anniversary of any particular battle. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Millis Select Board do hereby proclaim Monday, the 27th day of May, 2024, as Memorial Day in the town of Millis, and urge all citizens of this community to join us in support of Memorial Day.
At this point, it is my pleasure to introduce the state representative from the Massachusetts Legislature, James Arena DeRosa.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Bob. And thank you to all of the veterans here. It's my honor to represent the town of Millis in the legislature. So happy to be here this morning as we think of all those who came before us and the veterans and all of them and those who continue to serve our country. Larry was reading about the origins of Memorial Day, and it came at a time when there were great divisions in this country. Maybe a reminder to all of us that despite our differences, there is so much that binds us together as Americans, and maybe Memorial Day can be something that always reminds us of what we have in common. So I wanted to briefly touch on two issues related to veterans. There's actually a sign down the street that says we should prioritize veterans homeless, and I absolutely agree with that sentiment. Absolutely. But I have to just quickly dispute, it's a little disingenuous with the language because it mentions a program that's really, the shelter program is for family and children. So I just want to assure you all, we added millions of dollars to the Veterans Homeless Program. Anybody who's worked with veterans who are homeless know that they have a complex set of issues. There's often, not always, but sometimes there's mental health issues, PTSD. They have other issues going on. They need appropriate services. I called because I knew I was coming to speak at Memorial Day observances, and I talked to the Secretary's office. We still have empty beds in the soldiers' homes for anyone who needs them. All of that aside, if any of you ever are aware of a homeless vet, please contact my office, call me. We will work with them. We will work with you. We'll work with the veterans agents and do all that we can. So I assure you of that. The other issue, this is kind of a nice positive thing. I had meetings with all of the veterans groups around the district when I was first elected because it was important to hear them. We had a nice meeting here in Millis. And one of the common themes and threads to the messaging was when we get discharged from the service, we get good information about federal benefits, but because we all come from different branches, right, the six flagpoles and the branches, we get different information about what exactly the state offers. It doesn't offer us. It's a little confusing. We hear different things. Wouldn't it be nice if the state did something together and consolidated that? So I shared that information. I met with the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, and sure enough, by winter, and I know we weren't the only ones who suggested this, but by wintertime, they came out with a comprehensive document that solidifies and consolidates all of the services that are available to Massachusetts veterans. It's not that we can't do more, we can, but it's a great service, and I just want to thank you, because the veterans are actually part of making that happen, and just an example that sometimes in the legislature, politicians do listen. So thank you for that, and really, it's an honor. I wish and look forward to continue working with all of you in the years ahead. We have challenges in Massachusetts, but if we continue to work together, we will get there. So thank you all, and happy Memorial Day.
It's my pleasure next to introduce Susan Van Fenusik, who is a retired Master Sergeant for the United States Army and a member of Post 208 in the American Legion in Millis. Master Sergeant?
In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the lark still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
We will now have the playing of America the Beautiful by the Millis High School Band, led by Janice Norton. It will now be my pleasure to introduce you to the Veterans Agent for the town of Millis, John Moore, retired Major, United States Marine Corps, a graduate of the Citadel Military Academy, and also is in charge of a Corps of Cadets for Marine Corps ROTC at the high school level. Major Moore.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning, my fellow Americans and good citizens of the town of Millis. Welcome to the town of Millis's 2024 Memorial Day ceremony. I feel today's dreary weather is actually appropriate for the meaning of Memorial Day. Ladies and gentlemen, Representative Irina DeRosa, Select Board, veterans, and caring citizens, thank you for being here to help us honor our fellow countrymen and women. So here we are, remembering our fallen service members, aptly located at the Veterans Memorial Building, within these profound monuments and new flagpoles representing the military services and Coast Guard, for which I would personally like to thank Jim McKay for sprucing up Monument Park and placing these flagpoles. This is quickly becoming hallowed ground here in Millis. I'd also like to thank Robert Yeager, Post 208 Commander, Larry McCarter for being the Master of Ceremonies today. I'll be quick as I look forward to hearing Buddy Shropshire's words, a World War II veteran, a piece of living American history, and part of the greatest generation. My name is John Moore, and I am the Millis Veteran Services Officer. I served 20 years in the Marine Corps, and I served 4 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. My role here in Millis is to provide direction and services to veterans and their families. I work for Millis veterans who have served in each military branch. These veterans serve their country, now my office and position serve them. I'm also proud of the citizens of Millis who recently allowed the doubling of disabled veterans' real estate tax abatements. Millis is quickly becoming a town that veterans can gravitate to. And Millis, in deeds and their actions, shows it supports those who wore or currently wear their country's uniform. On this solemn day, as we gather to bear witness and honor the memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, we are reminded of the profound cost of our freedoms. Memorial Day is not merely a day on the calendar. It's a sacred day of remembrance, reflection, and reverence. Today, we pay tribute to the brave men and women who laid down their lives to defend our country. Their courage and dedication have secured liberties we cherish and the peace we enjoy. Each name etched on the memorials across this land represents a story of valor, an unbroken thread in the fabric of our national heritage. As we stand here, let us reflect the selflessness of these American heroes. They came from every corner of the country, from cities and small towns such as Millis, from every background and walk of life, yet they were united by a common purpose: to protect and defend the ideals that define America. Their sacrifices have enabled us to live in a country where freedom of speech, assembly, religion, press, and the right to pursue happiness are not just words, but realities. It is our duty to ensure that their legacy lives on, not only in our memories, but in our actions. Let us honor them by striving to build a nation worthy of their sacrifice. Today, let us also remember the families they left behind, the spouses, children, parents, and siblings who carry the weight of their loss every day. Their resilience and strength are a testament to the enduring spirit of our nation. As we place flags and flowers on graves, and as we stand in silent tribute, let us pledge to uphold the values for which they fought. Let us commit to supporting our veterans, aiding our military families, and working towards a world where peace prevails over conflict. In the words of President John F. Kennedy, a nation reveals itself not only by the men and women it produces, but also by the men and women it honors, the men and women it remembers. Today, we reveal the true heart of our nation through our remembrance. May we carry the memory of our fallen heroes with us, not just today, but every day. Let their sacrifice inspire us to live with gratitude, purpose, and a renewed commitment to the ideals of liberty and justice for all. And I will conclude with a quote from General George S. Patton: "It is foolish and wrong to mourn the men that died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived." Thank you, and please enjoy the rest of the day. And God bless Millis's fallen patriots and the peace and security that they provided.
I may add also that Major Moore is a member of Post 208 of the American Legion as well. At this point, we'd call upon the laying of the wreath at the War Memorial. No, I'm not. I'm checking them off as I go. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. One thing I would like to mention, if Mary Ann Sheridan would either stand or raise her hand. She's sitting up front here. Mary Ann Sheridan is the Grand Marshal for our Memorial Day this year, which is a position of honor we bestow each year on one of our veterans. I may add that she is a retired Staff Sergeant from the United States Army. On the laying of the wreath, I'm calling upon Patricia Poff to place the wreath.
Larry, Buddy's gonna go first. Buddy goes first, and then the lady.
Well, we'll do that because it's short.
All right.
Okay. We call upon Patricia Poff, and she is a former sergeant in the United States Army and also a member of Post 208. At this point, it is my pleasure to call upon Edward Shropshire, a World War II veteran of the United States Coast Guard in the European Theater of Operations. He is a long time and actually the longest serving member of Post 208 currently. Former Legionnaire Shropshire, I present you.
As he said, my name is Bud Shropshire, and I am a townie. I was born in Millis on Pleasant Street 97 years ago this week. I am going to deviate somewhat from the regular Memorial Day speeches and tell you what Millis was all about during World War II. And World War II was unique, in my opinion, because of the total commitment of every citizen in this country. President Roosevelt declared war on the Axis powers December 9th, 1941, and again on Japan after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. During his radio speech to the nation on December 9th, this is what he said. Every citizen in every walk of life shares the same responsibility. The lives of our soldiers, sailors, and the future of this nation depend upon the manner in which every one of us fulfill our obligation to this country. First, we must speed up all existing production by working a 7-day, 24-hour work week that includes industries that produce essential raw materials, and that, my friend, is what we did. In 1941, I was 14 years old, a Boy Scout in the first year of junior high. Millis High became a different place back then. We were taught what war was all about and the part we were about to play. In the corner of the school hallways, right here, was a large container filled with sand containing a shovel. We were instructed that if a incendiary bomb were come through the building, we were to pick it up with a shovel and deposit it in the sand. That's true. Incendiary bombs contain phosphorus, which burns with a great amount of heat and is very difficult to extinguish. They were dropped from airplanes in clusters for the only purpose of starting fires. In the auditorium, we were taught with manual arms, page 2, and guns. There were 2 airplane identification stations in Millis. Their purpose was to identify every aircraft flying over Millis and call into central control with the information on the type and direction. One station was located on the roof of the high school, which is right here, and the other station was on the tower in the Christian Herder Farm in Millis. High school students volunteered and manned those posts. The high school in Millis were changed to a 7 a.m. start and a conclusion at 12 noon. Those of us who were capable would then go to work in the shoe shop or the safe pack and work the second shift. The average pay was 40 cents an hour. Many of us would work until 11 p.m. and go home and then back to school at 7. Not a whole bunch of work for homework in those days. If we were lucky and we worked, thank you very much.
No cookies are going punished.
In Millis, there were safe-pack mills in the Joseph Herman Shoe Company. The safe-pack produced waterproof case liners for overseas shipment containers. The mill employed about 100 women to fold and crease various liners in shapes and sizes, and a separate section of the complex produced roofing shingles for roll roofing. This material was helped to build Army camps such as Camp Edwards on Cape Cod and Camp Devens in the western part of the state. The Joseph Herman Shoe Company produced shoes, both Army, Navy, and work boots. They operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until 1941 to 1945. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts would go door to door and ask people for donations for various materials for the war effort. The Millis American Legion would sponsor many of these drives. We would collect aluminum, copper, scrap iron, paper, cloth, and this material was deposited on the railroad flat car in Millis, and where it went from there, I don't even know. Next page. There were many women who donated their time, making different types of bandages for injured troops. There were sewing machines and equipment set up in the old Ellis School in Rockville, and where we used to call Rockville. My mother worked at the now at Bendix Aviation Corporation making airplane parts. The government rationed of about everything. Each city and town had their own rationing boards. These boards contained a group of people selected to expedite rationing as far as possible. Food stamps were issued in a small book form. They were cardboard-like design and contained red stamps for meat and blue stamps for produce, sugar, butter, gasoline, butter, etc. Gasoline was a high priority. On your automobile, if you had one, you were issued a letter that you'd post on your windshield or in the lower right-hand corner. It could be a letter A through F. If you had an A book, you were allowed 3 gallons of gasoline per week. If you worked in the essential war industry, you would be issued A, B, C, or D based on the length of travel. Oh yes, if you had a 4-passenger automobile, you were required to carry 4 people. For instance, if you worked at Fall River Shipyard in Quincy, you would be issued an E-book for essential travel. An F book was for farming. Automobile tires were at a premium because they were most essential for our equipment. Rubber tires for trucks, jeeps, tank treads, coats, boots, and much more. Raw rubber was imported from South America. Synthetic rubber called butyl was not invented until 1942. Rayon was invented in 1916. Nylon and the poly products hadn't been invented yet, so wool, cotton, raiment were most essential for the war effort. Next page. Women's silk stockings were almost impossible to come by because they were used to manufacture parachutes for our troops. Even the silkworms had to work 24/7. That's supposed to be a joke. Blackouts were the law of the land. Next page. All lights in non-essential areas were to be shut down. The headlights of automobiles were painted black halfway down the lens to lessen the glare. Each town had its own air raid warden. His job was to walk the neighborhood at night and make sure that each house had the shades pulled all the way down. Some of our ships just offshore were torpedoed by German subs because of the silhouette caused by the lights on shore during the first years of the war. That, my friends, is pretty much what Millis was like during the war years. We're not done yet. Now for the fun part. My speech is supposed to last 10 minutes. How am I doing so far? Millis High School was able to muster enough men to play a team of 11. I played every minute of every game both ways. We lost to our favorite enemy, Medway, 7-6. I got back at them 6 years later when I married one of their cheerleaders. That incidentally was 72 years ago. In those years in Millis, in order to graduate and receive your diploma, you were required to earn 15 points. At the end of my junior year, I had fortunately acquired 14 points. Several of my classmates had already enlisted in the service, and others that I couldn't, and 2 of my classmates couldn't wait any longer. We were allowed to take a final exam, and our homeroom teacher, Mrs. Mary Downing, some of you will remember her, gave us an exam in English literature. I passed with flying colors, and I think a complete idiot could have passed that test. Okay. Next page. I must have missed a page. The next 4 weeks of training at Manhattan Beach were interesting and informative. We marched to classes, and we even had a class on killing people. We marched everywhere we went. It seemed like those people just liked to march. After 4 weeks of basic training, we were allowed to choose the branch of Coast Guard we were interested in serving. I was always interested in anything that had to do with the ocean, so I asked for sea duty. Shortly after I was transferred to 14 New Chambers Street in Lower Manhattan, to a small hotel, to an old ferry boat where an equally old sea captain schooled us on steam pumps and triple expansion steam engines. These engines were used on most Liberty ships during the early part of the war. They were later replaced by steam turbines. These engines were later replaced by steam turbines, yes. Liberty ships carried most of the supplies and equipment to Europe and to the Pacific during the war. Mass production produced a Liberty ship approximately every 3 days. It is recorded that the United States lost in World War II 800 ships. From the ferry boat, I was transferred to the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, where I studied evaporation systems, period. In the process of making fresh water out of boiling seawater and condensing it. Upon completing the course, I was ordered to join the crew of the USS Monticello, AP-61, which was docked at the Naval Base in Norfolk, Virginia. AP stands for Armed Personnel. We loaded 7,000 troops for replacement forces in Europe. I hear it was the 101st Airborne. We shipped up to sea, and our destination was Naples, Italy. We headed south around Bermuda, across the Atlantic, north by the Azores, into the Mediterranean Sea. The southern route, I was told, was chosen because most German subs were in the North Atlantic, and our twin turbines propelled us at 28 knots. We could outrun the submarines at 18 knots. It took 3 days to unload and reload troops that had served their hits and then headed back to the good old USA. I was not a hero. I would have liked to have been one. But where I was, the war was someplace else. When I was in Italy, the fighting was in northern France, and when I was in the French ports of Le Havre, Marseille, the American troops were crossing the Rhine River into Germany. I made 6 trips across the Atlantic Ocean, making fresh water. I was 25 feet below the water line in the bilges and saw little of what was going on above me. It might be of interest to tell you about the USS Monticello, my ship, the AP-61. Last page. It might be of interest to tell you about the Monticello, my ship. Yeah, I said that already. She was 651 feet long, 10 inches, and about 2 football fields long. She had a beam of 72 feet, 6 inches, and weighed 32,000 tons. Armed with 2 5-inch guns, 6 3-inch guns, and a whole bunch of 50 caliber machine guns. She was operated by a crew of 494 men. We carried 7,000 troops on my watch, and we ferried 42,000 men across the Atlantic Ocean. In closing, I would like to tell you that my enjoyable experiences in my time was when we returned from Europe and entered New York Harbor, passed the Statue of Liberty, and docked at Pier 8 with our troops. The troops had spent the last 3 years fighting for the freedom that we all enjoy today. Bands were playing, mothers, wives, and girlfriends were waiting. Wow, what a reunion I'll never forget. The United States Coast Guard, named the Cutters, was commissioned by George Washington on October 4th, 1790. The Coast Guard has fought in every major war since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. World War I, the Coast Guard lost more men proportionately than any other branch of the service. In World War II, 231,000 men and 10,000 women served as part of the U.S. Navy. We manned 351 naval ships, 288 Army vessels, and 802 landing craft. On January 1st, 1946, the Coast Guard returned back to the U.S. Treasury Department. In conclusion, in this country and in this world, younger generations will determine if this country and if this world of ours survive. We know that you are better educated than my generation ever was. The future belongs to you. Do the best you can, learn all you can learn, and pray to God that in this divine wisdom there will be peace on earth everlasting. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Bud. That was a great speech, in my opinion. At this point, in the honor of those veterans of Millis that have passed since last Memorial Day, we present the necrology, which will be read by Robert Yeager.
Ed Wade, are you in position? Edward Jose Aquila, U.S. Air Force Reserve. Clayton M. Balcom, U.S. Army, Korea. Edward J. Bowles, U.S. Air Force. Robert Doucette, U.S. Marines. Wayne Hansen, United States Navy. John S. Howie, U.S. Navy. Richard Leon Fortier, U.S. Marines. Adam A. Fry, U.S. Air Force. Manuel A. Goes, Army Air Force. Pascual Vaquero, U.S. Marines. And Robert Joseph Quinzani, U.S. Army.
At this point, we'll have a salute to the dead by members of AMVETS Post 495 and American Legion Post 208, with the firing followed by taps from the Millis High School band and also Bruce Hall, a resident of Millis, Massachusetts. All rise. Present arms. At this point, I would like to call upon Post 208 Commander Robert Yeager for the dismissal.
Okay, you're in luck. After Mr. Shropshire's dissertation there, I'm not going to read my last page. Okay, I want to again thank you all for coming. I'm really enheartened by the showing and the support we get. And again, I say, from the select board and from you, the citizens of Millis, we all appreciate it, believe us. Right. A reminder, veterans are going to go after this. We're going to amble up to the cemetery to pay our respects up there to the dead. Okay, as General Douglas MacArthur said in Tokyo Bay in 1945, at the surrender and the end of World War II, these proceedings are closed. Thank you.